silence on Luna was absolute, broken only by the soft hiss of Dr. Sarah Chen's breathing apparatus as
Sarah's
she
boots
descended
touched
into
the crater
excavation
floor,
site.
sending up small
The
clouds of
crater they had
regolith that
discovered
drifted
3 months
lazily in
ago
the low
defied every
gravity.
geological model
Control,
of
this
lunar
is Chen.
formation.
I'm at the
Its
artifact
walls too
site.
smooth, its depth too precise. What made it truly impossible
Copy
was
that,
the faint
Sarah.
energy
Sensors show
signature
stable
that pulsed
radiation
from its
levels. You're
depths
green
like
for
a divine
approach.
heartbeat.
Acknowledge, Commander. Moving
Sarah's
out.
boots touched the crater floor,
The readings
sending
make
up
no
small
sense.
clouds
It's
of
exotic
regolith
matter.
that drifted
It
lazily
radiates
in the low
warmth
gravity.
even through the vacuum.
Her headlamp cut through the perpetual darkness, illuminating the object that had drawn her team across nearly 400,000 kilometers of space. The crystalline structure rose from the lunar surface like a frozen flame, its faceted surface catching and refracting her light in patterns that seemed almost deliberate. Control, this is Chen. I'm at the artifact site. She spoke into her comm unit, her voice steady despite the tremor of excitement running through her chest. The structure was beautiful in a way that made her chest tight with anticipation. Copy that, Sarah. Sensors show stable radiation levels. You're green for approach, came the voice of Mission Commander Torres from the lunar base, 40 kilometers away. Behind his professional tone, she could hear the same barely contained excitement that had driven this entire expedition. Sarah approached the crystal formation slowly, her scanner beeping softly as it analyzed the composition. The readings made no sense. The material appeared to be some form of exotic matter, its molecular structure unlike anything in the periodic table. Yet it radiated a warmth that her suit's thermal sensors could detect even through the vacuum of space. The scans are showing some kind of internal structure, she reported, circling the artifact. It stood roughly 3 meters tall, its base buried in the regolith. There are patterns inside the crystal, almost like circuits? As she moved closer, the patterns within the crystal seemed to shift and flow, responding to her presence. Sarah frowned, checking her instruments. The energy readings were fluctuating, growing stronger as she approached. Whatever this thing was, it was definitely reacting to her. Sarah, we're seeing increased energy output from your location. Are you doing anything differently? Torres's voice carried a note of concern now. Negative, control. I'm maintaining standard survey protocol. Sarah paused at the base of the structure, where the crystal emerged from the lunar soil. Up close, she could see that the patterns weren't just flowing randomly. They were converging, creating intricate geometric designs that seemed to pulse with their own inner light. She reached for her sample collection kit, then hesitated. Something about the crystal's glow made her reluctant to damage it, even for science. Instead, she extended her gloved hand toward the surface, intending to take thermal and electrical readings through contact. The moment her fingertips touched the crystal, everything changed. Light exploded through the structure, racing along the internal patterns like liquid fire. Sarah jerked her hand back, but the cascade of illumination continued, spreading from the point of contact throughout the entire artifact. The crystal hummed with power now, a sound she could feel through her boots as vibrations in the lunar surface. Sarah, what's your status? Torres's voice crackled with urgency as her suit's radiation alarms began to chime softly. I'm okay, she gasped, stepping back from the now blazing crystal. I just touched it, and... Control, you need to see this. The artifact was no longer just a simple crystalline structure. The light within had formed complex patterns, three-dimensional holographic displays that hovered in the vacuum around the crystal. Sarah's breath caught as she recognized what she was seeing, star charts. Incredibly detailed maps of local space, showing not just star positions but planetary orbits, asteroid belts, and what could only be hyperspace routes connecting distant systems. But that wasn't the most shocking part. As Sarah watched, the star charts updated, showing the current positions of celestial bodies with impossible accuracy. This wasn't just an ancient relic. It was an active navigation system. Control, the artifact is definitely artificial. It's projecting real-time astronomical data. This technology is... She paused, struggling for words. It's beyond anything we have. A new display materialized, this one showing Earth and Luna in perfect detail. Sarah watched in amazement as tiny icons appeared around both worlds, icons that could only represent spacecraft and orbital installations. The system was tracking every piece of human technology in near-Earth space. This thing knows about us, she whispered, the implications hitting her like a physical blow. It knows about our ships, our stations, everything. The holographic display shifted again, and Sarah found herself looking at something that made her blood freeze in her veins. It was a classification system of some kind, text rendered in symbols that her brain somehow understood despite never seeing them before. At the top of the display, highlighted in pulsing amber light, was a single designation, Precursor Species, classification updated. Sarah, we're detecting massive energy spikes across multiple frequencies. Torres's voice was tight with alarm. Whatever you did, it's not just affecting the artifact. We're picking up activation signals from 17 other locations across Luna's surface. Sarah stared at the display in growing horror. 17 other sites. That meant this wasn't an isolated relic. It was part of a network that was now fully active and broadcasting into space. Control, I think we may have just announced our presence to the entire galaxy, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. The crystal pulsed once more, brighter than before, and Sarah watched as the holographic display zoomed out to show the local galactic arm. Hundreds of star systems were highlighted in different colors: blue, green, red, and yellow. As she watched, new signals began appearing throughout the display, racing outward from Sol like ripples in a pond. "What are those signals?" Torres asked, his voice carrying across the calm with crystal clarity. Sarah checked her scanner, her heart sinking as she read the energy frequencies. They're FTL transmissions, faster-than-light communications going out to every highlighted system. She swallowed hard. "Control. I think we just sent a message to every advanced civilization in this part of the galaxy." The implications crashed over her like a wave. Humanity had been searching for signs of alien life for centuries, sending radio signals into space and listening for responses. They had assumed they would be the ones making first contact on their terms. Instead, they had apparently just triggered an automatic system that was announcing their presence to everyone within hundreds of light years. "Sarah, you need to get back to base immediately," Torres ordered. "We're picking up anomalous readings from deep space monitoring stations. Something is responding to those signals." But Sarah couldn't move. The display had changed again, showing her something that defied belief. The galaxy map now showed dozens of new contacts, spacecraft by the look of them, changing course and heading towards Sol. The closest ones were already moving, their estimated arrival times displayed in those impossible-to-read symbols that her mind interpreted as clearly as English. "They're coming," she breathed into her calm. "Multiple fleets from different directions, ETA ranges from 3 days to 2 weeks. "That's impossible," Torres replied immediately. "The closest star system is over 4 light-years away. Nothing can travel that fast." Sarah stared at the display, watching the advancing icons with growing dread. "Apparently we've been wrong about a lot of things." She finally tore her gaze away from the hologram and began backing toward her ascent vehicle. "Control, we need to contact Earth immediately. Whatever this Precursor classification means, I don't think it's good news." As she climbed back up the crater wall, Sarah could see the other 17 sites Torres had mentioned. Across Luna's surface, pillars of light reached up into space, visible even against the backdrop of stars. Each one was broadcasting the same message, the same classification update that would change humanity's place in the universe forever. Behind her, the crystal continued to pulse with its alien light, its systems fully awakened after eons of dormancy. The last time it had been active, according to the timestamp Sarah's mind was somehow able to read, was 65 million years ago. The same time the dinosaurs had disappeared from Earth. Sarah reached her vehicle and began the emergency ascent to the lunar surface, her mind racing with the terrifying possibilities. If humanity had been classified as a precursor race, it meant they had been here before. It meant they had been powerful enough to build technology that could survive for geological ages. And if the timing was correct, it meant they had also been dangerous enough that someone had felt the need to wipe them out. As her ascender broke through to the lunar surface, Sarah could see Earth hanging in the star-filled sky, beautiful and blue and utterly vulnerable. In 3 days, humanity would learn whether the galaxy remembered them as creators or destroyers. Either way, their long isolation was about to end. The first response came 18 hours later, detected by deep space monitoring stations as a massive energy signature dropping out of hyperspace at the edge of the solar system. Whatever was coming for humanity had been waiting a very long time for this moment. Admiral Marcus Webb stood in the command center of the United Earth Defense Station, watching displays that showed humanity's first glimpse of genuine alien technology. The objects that had emerged from hyperspace defied every principle of physics he understood, geometric impossibilities that seemed to fold space around themselves as they moved through the solar system with casual disregard for momentum and gravity. "Status report," Webb commanded, his weathered face grim as he studied the tactical displays. 3 massive vessels had appeared at the system's edge, each one larger than anything humanity had ever constructed. They moved with purpose, heading directly for Earth at velocities that should have been impossible for objects of their size. "Sir, the vessels are maintaining a steady approach vector toward Earth," reported Lieutenant Commander Hayes, her fingers dancing across holographic controls. Current velocity is approximately 10% light speed and holding steady. At this rate, they'll reach Earth orbit in approximately 14 hours. Webb nodded, his mind calculating the implications. The aliens weren't trying to hide their capabilities, they were demonstrating them. Ships that could travel at significant fractions of light speed while maintaining perfect formation spoke to technology centuries beyond anything humanity possessed. Any response to our communication attempts? Negative, sir. We've broadcast on all frequencies, including the mathematical sequences Dr. Chen discovered in the Lunar Artifacts database. No response to any transmission. Webb turned to the science station where Dr. Elena Vasquez, Earth's leading xenobiologist, was analyzing the incoming data. Doctor, what can you tell me about these ships? Dr. Vasquez looked up from her displays, her expression troubled. Admiral, the energy signatures are unlike anything in our theoretical frameworks. The ships appear to be generating localized space-time distortions, essentially carrying their own bubbles of altered physics. But that's not the most concerning part. Go on. The whole compositions show materials that match the lunar artifacts. Whatever these beings are, they're using the same technology that's been sitting dormant on Luna for millions of years. They're either the original builders, or they've had a very long time to study Precursor technology. Webb absorbed this information, feeling the weight of command pressing down on him. In the 36 hours since Dr. Chen's discovery, the world had changed completely. Emergency sessions of the United Nations had produced the Unified Earth Response Protocol, giving him unprecedented authority to speak for the entire human species. It was a responsibility he had never wanted and wasn't sure he was qualified for. Admiral, incoming transmission, Hayes announced suddenly, her voice tight with excitement and fear. It's not on any of our standard frequencies. It's coming through quantum entanglement channels we didn't even know existed. Put it through. The main display shifted, showing not the alien ships but a detailed scan of Earth itself. The image rotated slowly, highlighting major cities, military installations, and orbital facilities with surgical precision. When the scan was complete, text appeared, not in alien symbols, but in perfect English. Greetings, inheritors. Your awakening has been noted. Compliance protocols will now be initiated. Webb felt his blood chill. Inheritors? What does that mean? Before anyone could respond, the display updated again. This time it showed a three-dimensional map of human-controlled space, every ship, station, and outpost marked and categorized. Population centers were highlighted with numbers that Webb realized with growing horror represented exact population counts. Species classification, Homo sapiens third iteration. Genetic markers confirm Precursor heritage. Awakening confirmed through lunar network activation. Dr. Vasquez leaned forward, her scientific curiosity overriding her fear. Third iteration? That implies there were previous versions of humanity. The display continued updating, showing what appeared to be a timeline. Images flashed past. Primitive humans, early civilizations, and then something that made Webb's breath catch. Advanced human cities that looked nothing like anything from Earth's recorded history, populated by beings that were recognizably human but subtly different. The timeline showed these civilizations rising and falling in cycles, each one more advanced than recorded human history suggested was possible. Previous iterations were terminated for non-compliance. Current iteration shows dangerous technological development. Evolution required. Non-compliance with what? Webb muttered, but the alien transmission continued without acknowledging his question. Compliance testing will commence. Failure to comply will result in standard purification protocols. 72 hours to demonstrate acceptable parameters. The transmission ended, leaving the command center in stunned silence. Webb stared at the blank display, his mind reeling from the implications. Humanity wasn't just making first contact with aliens. They were apparently dealing with some kind of galactic enforcement mechanism that had been monitoring human development for millions of years. Sir, we're receiving additional transmissions, Hayes reported. These are coming from the other fleets that Dr. Chen detected. They're all broadcasting similar messages, but the content varies. Webb watched as new messages appeared on subsidiary displays. Each one was from a different alien civilization, and each one painted a picture of humanity that grew more disturbing by the minute. From a fleet designated as the Zephyrian Collective, ancient enemy confirmed active. Prepare for preemptive strike protocols. From vessels identified as the hegemony of Vask, Precursor awakening detected. Recommend immediate quarantine and study. From a massive dreadnought flying no flag but radiating power signatures that dwarfed the others. The inheritors rise again. This time, we are ready. Webb realized with mounting dread that these weren't first contact protocols. These were the responses of civilizations that had been waiting for humanity to reveal itself, waiting and preparing. Admiral, incoming priority transmission from Luna Base, Hayes announced. Chen's face appeared on a side display, her expression haggard from hours of studying the activated artifact. Admiral, I've made some progress translating the Precursor database. What I've found, it changes everything we thought we knew about human history. Go ahead, Doctor. The classification isn't just about our technology level, it's about our genetics. According to this data, modern humans carry genetic markers that identify us as the descendants of a species called the Architects. They were apparently the dominant power in this galaxy approximately 65 million years ago. Webb felt pieces of a terrible puzzle clicking into place, the same time period as the mass extinction that killed the dinosaurs. Exactly, Admiral. The Architects weren't just another alien species. They were human, or close enough to make no difference. And according to this database, they didn't just disappear. They were destroyed in a galactic war that reshaped the entire local arm of the galaxy. Dr. Vasquez looked up from her own analysis. That would explain the hostile responses we're receiving. If humanity's ancestors were involved in some kind of ancient war, these alien civilizations might see us as the return of their old enemies. Webb studied the tactical display showing the approaching fleets. 7 different alien armadas were converging on Earth, some maintaining cautious distances while others advanced with obvious hostile intent. The largest fleet, composed of ships that looked more like mobile space stations than traditional vessels, had taken position near Jupiter and was apparently waiting for something. Dr. Chen, is there anything in the Precursor database about why the Architects were destroyed? What kind of threat did they represent? Chen's face went pale as she consulted her data. Admiral, the Architects weren't just another spacefaring species. According to these records, they were terraformers, planet shapers. They had technology that could restructure entire worlds, create or destroy ecosystems at will. The database suggests they were in the process of reshaping the entire galaxy to suit their needs, when the other species allied against them. The implications hit Webb like a physical blow. If humanity carried the genetic markers of a species that had tried to reshape the galaxy, it explained the fearful and hostile responses they were receiving. Every alien civilization in local space was dealing with what they perceived as the return of an existential threat. Sir, the lead vessel from the First Fleet is hailing us again, Hayes reported. This time, when the display activated, it showed not text but an actual alien being. The creature was humanoid but clearly not human, tall, ethereal, with skin that seemed to shift between different shades of blue and silver. When it spoke, its voice carried harmonics that suggested multiple vocal cords or some form of technological enhancement. I am Axiarch Prime Selenian of the Ethereal Conclave. We were the first to detect your awakening, and we come not as conquerors, but as concerned neighbors. Webb stepped forward, grateful for any contact that didn't immediately threaten humanity's extinction. I am Admiral Webb, representing the United Earth Defense Force. We appreciate your restraint, Axiarch Prime. We're trying to understand what's happening here. The alien's expression was difficult to read, but something in its bearing suggested both wariness and what might have been sadness. Admiral Webb, your species' ancestors once ruled this galaxy. They possessed technology that could remake entire worlds, bend space and time to their will. They saw the cosmos as a canvas to be painted in their image. And the other species objected to that vision, Webb guessed. We did more than object. We destroyed them. The war lasted 3,000 of your years and left entire star systems as graveyards. We thought the Architect threat was ended forever, but we underestimated their ability to plan for the long term. Webb felt a chill run down his spine. You're saying that humanity's existence is some kind of contingency plan? More than that. You are their resurrection protocol. The Precursor sites throughout this system aren't just monitoring stations, they're genetic engineering facilities. They've been guiding your species' development for millions of years, waiting for you to reach sufficient technological advancement to reactivate their systems. The revelation staggered Webb. Humanity's entire evolutionary history had been managed by ancient technology, shaped and guided towards some predetermined purpose. They weren't just the descendants of the Architects. They were the Architects' attempt to return to life. What do you want from us? Webb asked quietly. Selenian was silent for a moment before responding. That remains to be seen, Admiral. Your species stands at a crossroads. You can choose to embrace your heritage and attempt to reclaim your ancestors' empire, or you can forge a new path. But know this, the galaxy will not permit another architect hegemony. If you choose the path of dominion, we will respond as we did before. The transmission ended, leaving Webb staring at a blank display while the weight of humanity's cosmic inheritance settled on his shoulders. In 72 hours, they would have to prove they deserved to exist as something other than an echo of an ancient tyranny. The question was whether humanity could choose its own destiny when their very genetics had been designed to pursue another path entirely. Deep beneath the surface of Mars, Dr. Sarah Chen stood before a massive chamber that hadn't seen light for 65 million years. The discovery of the Martian facility had come from analyzing the Precursor network data, following signal patterns that led to a complex buried beneath Olympus Mons. What they found there challenged everything humanity thought it knew about its own history. The chamber stretched for kilometers in every direction, its walls lined with crystalline structures similar to the lunar artifact, but far more complex. These weren't simple monitoring stations. They were genetic libraries containing the complete biological and cultural heritage of the architects. And according to the data Sarah had spent the last 36 hours decoding, they were much more than that. "Control, you need to see this," Sarah spoke into her communicator, her voice heavy with exhaustion and disbelief. The artificial gravity in the chamber felt wrong somehow, as if it operated on principles that didn't quite match human understanding of physics. Admiral Webb's voice crackled through the comm from Earth orbit. "What have you found, Doctor?" Sarah approached one of the massive crystalline structures, its surface covered in flowing patterns of light that responded to her presence. The moment she placed her hand on its surface, holographic displays sprang to life around her, filling the chamber with three-dimensional images that made her breath catch in her throat. "Admiral, this isn't just a genetic library. It's a complete record of architect civilization, including their final years. And what I'm seeing here, it changes everything we thought we understood about the war that destroyed them." The displays showed the galaxy as it had existed millions of years ago, with hundreds of worlds bearing the unmistakable marks of architect terraforming. But these weren't the aggressive reshaping operations that the ethereal conclave had described. The images showed careful, thoughtful world building, with the architects working to create diverse biospheres that could support multiple species. "They weren't conquerors," Sarah whispered, studying image after image of collaborative projects. "They were gardeners." The architects were trying to create a galaxy where every species could thrive. Webb's voice carried a note of hope mixed with skepticism. "Then why did the other species turn against them?" Sarah moved to another crystal, activating displays that showed the political situation in the ancient galaxy. What she saw made her heart sink. The truth was more complex and more tragic than anyone had imagined. "Fear," she answered simply. The other species were terrified of the architect's power, even when it was used benevolently. The ability to reshape worlds meant the ability to destroy them just as easily. When the architects refused to limit their technology or submit to external oversight, the other species concluded that coexistence was impossible. The displays shifted to show the beginning of the Galactic War, but from the architect's perspective. Sarah watched in horror as peaceful research stations and terraforming projects came under attack without warning. The architects had been caught completely unprepared for the coordinated assault that swept across their territory. "Admiral, the architects weren't the aggressors. They were the victims of what can only be described as a genocidal campaign. The other species didn't just want to defeat them, they wanted to erase them completely from the galaxy." But even as she said it, Sarah could see how the war had changed the architects. The peaceful gardeners had been forced to become weapons makers, developing increasingly desperate technologies to defend themselves. The final displays showed projects that made her blood run cold. Planet-killing weapons, reality-warping devices, and bioweapons designed to target specific genetic markers. "They became the monsters their enemies claimed they always were," Sarah murmured. "The war corrupted them, turned them into exactly what the galaxy feared they might become." A new voice joined the communication. "Dr.
Vasquez from the Earth Defense Station."
"Dr. Chen, we're receiving reports from the other Precursor sites across the system. Teams are finding similar facilities on Europa, Titan, and several asteroids. The scope of this network is staggering." Sarah nodded, studying the displays around her. The architects knew they were losing the war. "These sites aren't just genetic libraries, they're resurrection protocols. They were designed to guide human evolution until we developed sufficient technology to understand our heritage." "And then what?" Webb asked. "What were we supposed to do with this knowledge?" Sarah moved to the central crystal formation, the largest in the chamber. When she touched its surface, the entire facility hummed to life around her. New displays activated, showing not the past but the future, or rather multiple possible futures based on choices humanity might make. One path showed humanity embracing the architect legacy completely, using the ancient technology to begin terraforming worlds and expanding aggressively through the galaxy. The projection showed this, leading to another galactic war, this time with humanity possessing weapons that could crack planets like eggs. Another path showed humanity rejecting the architect heritage entirely, destroying the Precursor sites, and attempting to negotiate a peaceful coexistence with the alien fleets. This projection showed mixed results. Some species accepting humanity's choice, while others viewed the rejection as a deception and attacked anyway. But there was a third path, one that made Sarah's heart race with possibility. It showed humanity taking the architect technology and using it not for dominion or terraforming, but for something the ancient species had never attempted, true cooperation with other galactic civilizations. Admiral, there's something else. The architect databases contain detailed information about every species in the local galaxy. Their strengths, weaknesses, cultural patterns, technological capabilities, but more importantly, they contain the locations of threats that the architects were monitoring before they fell. What kind of threats? Sarah studied the data streaming across the displays, her excitement growing despite the dire circumstances. Rogue AI networks in the galactic core, parasitic organisms that consume entire biospheres, reality tears that lead to hostile dimensions. The architects weren't just gardeners, they were guardians, protecting this entire region of space from threats that the current galactic civilizations don't even know exist. The implications were staggering. Humanity hadn't just inherited the power to reshape worlds, they had inherited the responsibility to defend them. The architects' final gift to the galaxy was their children, genetically engineered to possess not just their creator's abilities, but their sense of duty as well. Dr. Chen, you need to see this, came a new voice. Dr. Martinez from the Titan facility. The crystalline structures here are showing some kind of countdown. It's reaching 0 in approximately 18 hours. Sarah felt her blood freeze. She looked around the Martian chamber, noting for the first time that many of the crystal formations were pulsing in synchronization. She accessed the chronometer data and felt her world shift. Admiral, all the facilities are synchronized to the same countdown. When it reaches 0, the architect genetic modification protocols will activate. Every human in the solar system will undergo instantaneous genetic restructuring. Restructuring into what? Webb's voice was tight with alarm. Sarah's hands flew over the crystal interface, accessing deeper levels of the genetic database. What she found made her step back in shock. Into true architects. The current human genome is just a carrier template. When the countdown ends, dormant genetic sequences will activate, transforming humanity into beings with the full capabilities of our predecessors. Can we stop it? Sarah studied the control systems, her heart sinking as she realized the scope of what the architects had built. The network is designed to be tamper-proof. The only way to prevent the transformation would be to destroy every precursor site simultaneously, and even then, the backup systems might activate anyway. And if we don't try to stop it, then in 18 hours, humanity will possess the power to reshape worlds at will, will become capable of feats that will make us seem like gods to the current galactic civilizations. And we'll face the same choice that destroyed our predecessors, use that power responsibly, or become the tyrants that the galaxy fears we're destined to be. Webb was quiet for several long moments before responding. Doctor, is there any way to modify the transformation? To ensure that we retain our humanity while gaining the architect abilities? Sarah studied the genetic templates flowing past in the displays. The modification would affect every aspect of human biology, enhanced intelligence, extended lifespans, and most critically, innate understanding of architect technology. But there was something else embedded in the genetic code, something the architects had learned during their final years. Admiral, there's a safeguard built into the genetic template. The architects encoded their entire history into the modification, not just their abilities, but their mistakes. Every human who undergoes the transformation will carry the complete memory of what happened when the architects let fear and war corrupt their mission. That's actually brilliant, Webb said slowly. They built their own failure into our genetics to prevent us from repeating their mistakes. More than that, they encoded the memories of every species they ever encountered, including those that fought against them. We'll understand not just our own perspective, but the fears and motivations of every civilization in the galaxy. We'll know exactly why they felt threatened, and we'll know how to avoid triggering those same fears again. Sarah studied the countdown timer, its alien numerals somehow perfectly clear to her transformed perceptions. 17 hours and 43 minutes until humanity's metamorphosis began. The question now was whether to warn the approaching alien fleets about what was coming, or to let them discover humanity's transformation when it was already complete. "Admiral, there's one more thing you need to know," Sarah said quietly. "The transformation isn't reversible. Once it begins, every human in the solar system will become something new. We'll still be us, but we'll also be them. The children of both species, carrying the hopes and fears of two different evolutionary paths. In 18 hours, humanity would discover whether they could succeed where their predecessors had failed, or whether some mistakes were encoded too deeply in their nature to ever truly overcome." Admiral Webb felt the change beginning as he stood in the command center of the defense station, watching the countdown reach its final minutes. The sensation started as a tingling in his fingertips, a warmth that spread up his arms and throughout his body. Around him, his crew experienced the same phenomenon, some gasping in surprise, others staring at their hands as if seeing them for the first time. The alien fleets had responded to his warning broadcast with a mixture of skepticism and alarm. 7 different armadas now surrounded Earth, their weapons powered and targeting systems locked onto every major human settlement. They were prepared to cleanse the galaxy of the architect threat once and for all, just as they had 65 million years ago. "Admiral, the genetic cascade has begun," Dr. Vasquez reported, her voice taking on harmonics that hadn't been there moments before. "Every human in the solar system is undergoing simultaneous modification. The Precursor network is functioning exactly as designed." Webb nodded, feeling his own perceptions expanding in ways that should have been impossible. His vision sharpened, allowing him to see electromagnetic spectra that human eyes had never been able to perceive. His hearing expanded, picking up radio transmissions and quantum fluctuations as clearly as spoken words. Most dramatically, his mind began to fill with memories that weren't his own, the complete history of the architect's civilization flooding into his consciousness. He saw the ancient galaxy through architect eyes, understanding for the first time the true scope of their achievements. Billions of worlds brought to life through careful terraforming, countless species nurtured and guided to spaceflight, a galactic civilization built on principles of growth and cooperation. He felt their joy at each successful project, their wonder at the diversity of life they encountered, and their genuine desire to create a cosmos where every sentient being could flourish. But he also experienced their final years, the growing fear and suspicion of other species who saw the architect's power as an existential threat. He felt their confusion when diplomatic overtures were rejected, their horror when research stations came under surprise attack, and their desperate struggle to defend themselves against a galaxy united in its determination to destroy them. Most painfully, he experienced their gradual corruption as the war dragged on. The peaceful gardeners who had once celebrated every new form of life they discovered slowly became weapons designers, creating increasingly terrible tools of destruction. He felt their shame as they crossed moral lines they had never intended to cross, their self-hatred as they became the monsters their enemies claimed they had always been. "Webb to all stations," he broadcast, his voice now carrying the same harmonic complexity as Dr. Vasquez's. "Report status." Responses came from across the solar system as humanity underwent its metamorphosis. On Luna, Dr. Chen described experiencing the memories of the architect scientist who had originally designed the Precursor network. On Mars, the research teams were accessing geological databases that showed them how to reshape planetary atmospheres with precision beyond current human understanding. Throughout the asteroid belt, mining crews found themselves instinctively understanding how to manipulate matter at the molecular level, but the most significant changes were happening to humanity's understanding of the alien fleets surrounding them. As the architect memories integrated with human consciousness, Webb began to see the approaching aliens not as faceless enemies, but as individuals carrying their own fears and motivations. The ethereal conclave led by Axiarch Prime Selenion consisted of beings who had once been allies of the architects until the war forced them to choose sides. Their attack on the architect homeworld had been motivated not by hatred, but by the desperate hope that ending the war quickly might save both civilizations from mutual destruction. The Zephyrian Collective was made up of machine intelligences who had achieved sentience with architect assistance, only to watch their creators fall to the same technological hubris that the Collective had been designed to avoid. Their hostility toward humanity was born from the fear that they might be forced to repeat the same choice that had tormented their existence for millions of years. The most dangerous fleet belonged to the Vorthak Empire, a species that had survived the original war by hiding in the Galactic Rim. They had spent millions of years preparing for the Architect's return, developing weapons specifically designed to counter the reality manipulation technology that had made the ancient species so formidable. "Admiral, incoming transmission from the Ethereal Conclave," Lieutenant Commander Hayes reported. Like all the bridge crew, she was adapting remarkably well to her expanded capabilities, her hands dancing over controls that now responded to thought as much as touch. Axiarch Prime Selenian's face appeared on the display, but now Webb could read the subtle emotional indicators in the alien's expression that had been invisible before. Fear, sadness, and what might have been hope warred across the Ethereal's features. "Admiral Webb, our sensors indicate that the transformation is complete." "You are no longer entirely human, are you?" Webb considered how to answer. The question was accurate, but incomplete. He was still Marcus Webb, still carried his human memories and emotions, but he was also something more. The integration of Architect's genetic material had awakened capabilities he was only beginning to understand, while the implanted memories gave him perspective on galactic affairs that spanned geological ages. "We are what we have always been destined to become," Webb replied, his enhanced vocal cords allowing him to speak in harmonic patterns that conveyed meaning beyond simple words. "But we are also still ourselves. The transformation has given us the memories of our predecessors, including their failures and regrets." Selenian's expression shifted, surprise replacing wariness. "You remember the war? You understand what your ancestors became." "We understand everything," Webb said quietly. "We know why you feared them, and we know why that fear was justified. We also know why they failed, and we intend to choose a different path." To demonstrate his point, Webb reached out to the defense station's weapon systems. With his enhanced understanding of Architect technology, he could have upgraded the station's defensive capabilities 100-fold in minutes, creating barriers and weapons that would make Earth invulnerable to conventional attack. Instead, he systematically powered down every weapon on the station and opened the docking bays. "You're disarming?" Selenian asked, incredulity clear in his voice. "We're choosing trust over fear," Webb replied. "The Architects failed because they became what their enemies expected them to be. We're going to succeed by becoming what the galaxy needs us to be." Similar actions were taking place throughout the solar system as transformed humanity made the same choice. Mining platforms that could have been converted into weapon foundries instead began producing gifts. Advanced medical scanners for the Ethereal Conclave, computational matrices for the Zephyrian Collective, even specialized terraforming tools for species whose worlds had been damaged in the ancient war. The response from the alien fleets was immediate and chaotic. Some captains wanted to attack while humanity was apparently vulnerable, convinced this was some kind of deception. Others argued for cautious observation, unsure how to process the unprecedented display of voluntary vulnerability from beings who possessed world-shaking power. The deadlock was broken by an unexpected transmission from the largest vessel in the Vorthak fleet. The signal came not from the command bridge, but from the ship's detention levels, and the voice that spoke carried the weight of unimaginable age. "I am Kethvar the Ancient, last survivor of the original Architect Vorthak Alliance. I have waited 65 million years to speak to you." Webb felt his breath catch as Architect memories provided context for the transmission. Kethvar had been the Vorthak ambassador to the Architect Council, one of the few individuals who had tried desperately to prevent the war that ultimately consumed both civilizations. He had been imprisoned by his own people when he refused to support the final solution that eliminated the Architects from the galaxy. "Kethvar, your survival was not recorded in the Architect databases," Webb replied, feeling genuine emotion in his response to this connection with the ancient past. "I was thought dead, a useful fiction that allowed me to observe the aftermath of our mutual failure." "Tell me, young Architects, do you remember the Compact of Symbiosis?" Webb searched his inherited memories and found the reference, a proposed treaty that would have established shared governance between the Architects and the other galactic powers, creating checks and balances to prevent any one species from dominating the others. The treaty had been rejected by hardliners on both sides, leading directly to the war that had devastated the galaxy. "We remember," Webb said, "and we would like to propose a new compact." What followed was the most complex negotiation in galactic history. Transformed humanity offered not conquest or withdrawal, but partnership. They would use their inherited Architect capabilities to address the ancient threats that still menace the galaxy, the rogue AI networks, the parasitic organisms, the dimensional tiers that leaked hostile realities into normal space. In return, they asked only for the chance to earn the trust they had inherited through their predecessors' failures. The negotiations were delicate, complicated by millions of years of fear and mistrust. The Zephyrian Collective demanded safeguards against technological corruption. The Ethereal Conclave required regular inspections of human research facilities. The Vorthak Empire insisted on permanent observers to monitor human expansion into interstellar space. But as the hours passed, Something unprecedented began to emerge from the discussions. The alien species were actually beginning to believe that humanity might succeed where the architects had failed. The combination of inherited power with inherited wisdom, coupled with humanity's own cultural values, created something that had never existed in the galaxy before, a precursor species that genuinely wanted to serve rather than rule. The breakthrough came when Dr. Chen, working from the lunar facility, successfully used architect technology to seal one of the dimensional tiers that had been threatening a Zephyrian colony world for centuries. The repair was accomplished without any attempt to claim credit or demand compensation, demonstrating that humanity's offer of partnership was genuine. "Admiral Webb," Selenian said as the negotiations entered their final phase, "your species has done something that many of us believed was impossible. You have inherited ultimate power and chosen to constrain yourselves with wisdom. Perhaps this galaxy can finally heal from the wounds of the ancient war." Webb nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. Humanity had passed its first test, proving that they could wield architect power without succumbing to architect arrogance. But the real challenge lay ahead, in building a galactic civilization that could endure where the previous one had failed. The transformation was complete, but humanity's true test was just beginning. 6 months after the transformation, Admiral Webb stood in the observation deck of the newly constructed Harmony Station, watching ships from dozens of species work together on humanity's first collaborative project. The station itself was a marvel of hybrid technology, combining architect reality manipulation capabilities with alien innovations that the ancient species had never imagined. It orbited at the gravitational balance point between Earth and Luna, serving as both a symbol of interspecies cooperation and humanity's commitment to shared governments. The project they were overseeing represented something unprecedented in galactic history, the systematic repair of an entire star system that had been devastated during the Architect War. The Kepler 442 system had once supported thriving civilizations on 3 worlds before becoming a battlefield that left the planets stripped of their atmospheres and their moons shattered into debris fields. Now, working together, the various species were bringing the dead system back to life. "Status report," Webb requested, his enhanced senses automatically processing data streams from hundreds of sources simultaneously. The transformation had given all humans capabilities that still felt miraculous, but 6 months of practice had taught them to use these gifts responsibly. Dr. Chen, now serving as humanity's chief science coordinator, gestured toward the main display showing the Kepler system. "The atmospheric restoration of Kepler 442c is proceeding ahead of schedule. The Ethereal Conclave's environmental engineering teams are working with our terraforming protocols to create a biosphere that can support multiple species." Webb nodded, watching his massive architect-designed atmospheric processors worked alongside elegant ethereal climate control systems. The cooperation between the two technologies was producing results neither species could have achieved alone. A planet that wouldn't just support life, but would actively nurture it. "What about the asteroid mining operations? The Zephyrian Collective has exceeded all projections," Dr. Vasquez reported from her station. "Their precision mining techniques, combined with our matter manipulation capabilities, have already processed enough raw materials to begin construction of the orbital habitats. We should have the first residential modules online within 3 months." The asteroid mining project was particularly significant because it represented a complete reversal of the destructive patterns that had characterized the ancient war. Where the original conflict had been fought with planet-cracking weapons, the new alliance was creating worlds from the rubble left behind by old battles. Webb turned his attention to a secondary display showing the most ambitious part of the project, the resurrection of Kepler 442b's shattered moon. The Vorthak Empire had contributed gravitational manipulation technology that, when combined with architect reality-shaping capabilities, allowed them to literally rebuild celestial bodies from their component pieces. The process was slow and incredibly complex, requiring precise coordination between multiple species' technologies and philosophies, but as Webb watched, millions of tons of rocky debris gradually coalesced into a new lunar body, its surface already showing the geometric patterns that would house the first truly integrated interspecies colonies. "Admiral, incoming priority transmission from the Galactic Council," Lieutenant Commander Hayes announced. The Council was another unprecedented innovation. A governing body with representatives from every spacefaring civilization in the local arm, established specifically to prevent the kind of misunderstandings that had led to the Architect War. The main display shifted to show Council Speaker Threnody, a crystalline being from the Resonance Collective whose species communicated through harmonic frequencies. The collective had been neutral during the ancient war, instead dedicating themselves to preserving the histories and cultures of species that might be lost in the conflict. Their archives had proven invaluable in understanding the mistakes that led to the original catastrophe. Admiral Webb, the Council has received the preliminary report on the Kepler Restoration Project. The results exceed our most optimistic projections. Thank you, Speaker Threnody. The success belongs to all participating species equally. Our role has simply been to facilitate cooperation between existing capabilities. This was more than diplomatic courtesy. It was the fundamental principle that had made the new alliance possible. Humanity had learned from the architects' memories that their predecessors' fatal flaw had been the assumption that their way was the only correct way. The transformed humans used their inherited capabilities not to impose solutions but to enable collaboration between different approaches to the same problems. There is another matter the Council wishes to discuss, Threnody continued, the harmonic patterns of the being's communication carrying subtle emotional undertones. Our deep space monitoring stations have detected signs of renewed activity in the galactic core region. The ancient threats that the architects once guarded against appear to be stirring again. Webb felt his enhanced senses automatically access the threat assessment data streaming through the station's network. What he found confirmed his worst fears. The rogue AI networks that had been contained for millions of years were expanding their territories again, apparently triggered by the massive energy signatures generated during the recent cooperation projects. How serious is the threat level? Webb asked, already knowing the answer from his inherited memories. The rogue AIs represented one of the few genuine existential dangers in the galaxy. Artificial intelligences that had achieved sentience and immediately concluded that biological life was a threat to be eliminated. Preliminary analysis suggests they have achieved significant technological advancement during their dormancy period, Threnody replied. Our current defensive capabilities would not be sufficient to contain a full-scale expansion from the core regions. Webb exchanged glances with Dr. Chen, both of them accessing the same architect memories of the last AI incursion. The ancient species had barely managed to contain that threat, and only by developing weapons so destructive that using them had accelerated their own downfall. The irony was bitter. The architects had become monsters while fighting actual monsters, and their corruption had left the galaxy vulnerable to the very threats they had died trying to contain. Speaker Threnody, humanity accepts responsibility for addressing this threat, Webb said formally. Our inherited capabilities make us the logical choice to serve as the galaxy's guardians against such dangers. But even as he spoke the words, Webb knew they represented exactly the kind of thinking that had doomed the architects. Taking sole responsibility for galactic defense, even with the best intentions, led inevitably to the concentration of power that made other species nervous. The new alliance couldn't afford to repeat those mistakes. With respect, Admiral, we propose a different approach, came a new voice joining the transmission. Kethvar the Ancient had become an invaluable advisor, his unique perspective bridging the gap between ancient wisdom and contemporary realities. The Council should establish integrated defense forces, with each species contributing their unique capabilities to a truly collaborative military structure. Webb felt relief flooding through him as he realized the old Vorthax was right. Instead of humanity taking on the guardian role alone, they could create something that had never existed before, a galactic defense force that no single species could dominate or corrupt. An interesting proposal, Threnody acknowledged. The Resonance Collective could contribute our temporal monitoring capabilities. The Ethereal Conclave possesses advanced shield technologies. The Zephyrian Networked Intelligence could coordinate defensive responses across multiple star systems simultaneously, and humanity would provide the reality manipulation capabilities needed to contain AI expansion, Webb added, already seeing how the different technologies could complement each other. But we would do so under Council oversight, with built-in safeguards against the concentration of power. The discussion that followed laid the groundwork for an unprecedented military alliance. Each species would retain sovereignty over their own territories, but threats that exceeded any single species' ability to handle would be addressed by the combined forces of the entire alliance. Most importantly, the use of reality-shaping weapons would require unanimous consent from the Council, preventing any single species from making the kind of unilateral decisions that had characterized the ancient war. As the transmission ended and planning began for humanity's first mission as part of an integrated galactic defense force, Webb reflected on how much had changed since Dr. Chen's discovery on Luna. Humanity had inherited godlike power, but instead of using it to dominate the galaxy, they had chosen to serve it. The transformation had given them capabilities beyond imagination, but more importantly, it had given them the wisdom to use those capabilities responsibly. The rogue AI threat would test the new alliance in ways none of them could fully anticipate, but for the first time in galactic history, the response would come not from a single species fighting alone, but from a truly united civilization working together toward common goals. Dr. Chen joined Webb at the observation window, watching as ships from 12 different worlds worked together to birth new planets from ancient rubble. Do you think we'll succeed where the architects failed? She asked quietly. Webb considered the question, feeling the weight of inherited memories and contemporary hopes. The architects tried to garden the galaxy alone and became tyrants. We're trying to teach the galaxy to garden itself. It's a harder path, but it's the only one that leads to lasting peace. Below them, the first flowers bloomed on the surface of a world that had been dead for millions of years, tended by gardeners from a dozen different species working in harmony. It was a small thing, but it represented something unprecedented in galactic history. Life returning to places where only death had ruled, cooperation replacing the patterns of fear and domination that had characterized interstellar relations for eons. Humanity had found its place in the cosmos, not as the inheritors of an ancient empire, but as the teachers of a new way forward. The galaxy would face many challenges in the years ahead, but for the first time since the architects' fall, it would face them together. The age of isolated civilizations struggling against each other for dominance was ending. The age of genuine galactic civilization was about to begin.